Hello everyone, in this last video from this mini-series we will be talking about the DWG export setup and the tabs colors, and in general in solids there is not much, and units and coordinates that is for a different types of videos because it's about the coordinates. So first we will go with the colors. You can see we have three different options in here. The first one is index color, which will use the color ID specified on the layers tab. What this means is that it will export things from Revit based on the settings which we have set in here in this layers tab. So if I have here my color ID 113, it will export it based on this ID. So basically, if I go back now to our previous export, for example this one, you can see that the color of this wall is green. It's being set by a layer. And if I go to the layer, you can see that the A wall is set to be 113 because we set it this way inside of the Revit project. So if I go now back to my Revit file, and I will go with the second option, which is the specified in object styles, which will use the true colors, RGB values. This means that the color specified in object styles will be used. And what this means for us in this project is that, for example, if I will go to my manage object styles and to my walls, it will use this color to export from Revit to DWG. So if I will now change this to be a blue, so it will be better visible. So you can see, for example, here I have my lines now blue, and I export it to DWG with this setting. So my colors are specified in object styles. Hit OK, hit next. 1.8. And I will open it now in my DWG. You can see that the walls are now blue. And if I go to my layers, you can see that the layer is set by the RGB value 00255, which is this blue color. So you can see they are not green now, but they are blue. And if we go back to our Revit, you can see the last setting in here in the colors which is specified in view, which will also use the true colors, so RGB values, but it will use the color specified in the Revit view. And what this means is that it will use the colors which are specified for the materials used for these objects. So here you can see I have my wall. If I go to the structure, the material is set to be by category. So I need to go to my manage object styles to walls category to see this material. And you can see that the material is default wall. If I go to the definition of the material, here you can see the color, which is RGB 808080. And this is the color that it will use when exporting with this last setting. So if I will go back to the export options and change this to be specified in view, so it will use this color. Hit OK, hit next, and go with 1.9, and again open it in DWG. You can see that now it looks the most as it looks like in my Revit view. And you can see that if I go to my layer, that now the A wall has 808080, which is the color which was defined inside of the properties of this material. So these are the settings for exporting the colors, how it should export the colors from the Revit file to DWG. And then if we go to the last settings in general, Here probably the most useful one is this one for room space and area boundaries. If you have set this to be yes, export room spaces and areas and polylines, it will export them as a polyline, as a closed polyline inside of the DWG file. So if I will now place a room in here, and I will export this with the setting export rooms, spaces and areas and polylines set to yes. And I will go next and go with 110 and open it. You can see that on the first side there is nothing in here, and that is because this layer is turned off by default. You can see this is the layer A area boundary and it is turned off. If I turn it on, you can now see the polyline exported in here. And if I click on it, you can see it is a closed polyline, so we can get some area and perimeter values from it. So this was the last setting from the DWG export setup. And all the others in here are the same as like when you are printing, so it will hide scope boxes and so on and so forth. This one is also important. Default export options is export views on sheets and links as external references. I usually turn this off because like if you have it placed on a sheet, it will be exported as a separate DWG file and linked as an external reference. I usually want this to be in like one DWG file. So this is all, and the units and coordinates are for a different tutorial.